Hunley has the whole monopoly. I don't know who that son of a bitch thinks he is.
Welcome to Laid Back Law with your favorite lawyers from around the interwebs.
No. Piers Morgan is doing the hide my boner lean. That's what he's doing. Look at him.
I think this is actually the first time that a billionaire cut safety standards, and it was the billionaire themselves that died.
And that's what made Polieres. I don't even know how to pronounce this guy's name.
I am board certified criminal trial law in Florida. I'm your man. Of course, you have to compensate me.
Discussing the most pressing of topics every Friday at noon Eastern Time.
I did this way before him. I had the big brain panel before Eric Hunley even existed.
But I do exist. And I now have the panel, Ricada. I'm waiting for you to show your face back on here again. He's been out for a while. He manages to get a chiropractor appointment or something at the exact same time. So it's always a challenge to get Ricada here. Happy to say that we are going to potentially have an extremely full house today. I would like to think of it as I'm starting to build the Diddy defense team.
No. Wow. Oh, it's that time of day. I'm sorry. I have an appointment. I forgot about.
All right. Well, in all seriousness, I don't always announce this, but I'm so happy to have everybody here, and I want to thank all of you guys, you lawyers who have the bad taste enough to come hang out with me every week on Fridays, because while an audience is important, this show, it's kind of like there's groups on both sides. There's the audience, there's the people here, and it really means the world to me that so many of you guys give of your time to help me and everybody else try to comprehend this legal morass that we call society.
That's a good word. We need to use morass more often.
I think so.
Did you say morass? You know,
yeah, we need that too.
See, multi-purpose words. Exactly. Pay attention, YouTube. It's a play on words, and it's past 7 seconds.
You can't take me anywhere. I'm sorry.
We have somebody who is attending stand-up comedy clubs. So, okay, I'm going to jump on a story because we have a nautical legal expert, and that's kind of a specialized field. And there's this bridge near Baltimore that just got hit by a giant craft. And there's a lot of rumors flying around about it in a black box and missing minutes. And I confess that I am clueless on what is real, what is not.
Well, unlike others, you're not professing to know suddenly everything about the subject. Everyone is now an instant maritime expert. Ian, before he starts, can you just reach over and just shoot me in the head, please, before we get going on this?
Well,
what would you like to know?
Everyone was suddenly an expert in ape behavior. That was fun.
I guess I would like to get an overview because there's a lot of questions here. You know, is there liability? What is going on? Who's liable to what? What exactly kind of happened? You know, because there's so much flying out there. Like, how dare the whole bridge blow apart by one hit? And people are saying, well, it's designed to be a single unit, and when the integrity went, the whole thing went. And I just don't know. Something said it's actually a good design for a bridge. It's just if you have a carrier, a freighter that's so freaking large.
Well, I think that's part of the problem. People don't understand exactly the size of a vessel they're dealing with.
Huge.
This is a 116,000 ton vessel. It's 1,000 feet long. It's 300 meters long. So it's about as wide as an American football field is wide. So it's literally 3 American football fields stacked end to end. It carries 10,000 containers. I think there was only about 5,000 containers on it at the time they had the accident. But
this is the longest wind up to a your mom joke that we've had on the channel yet.
And each container weighs 2,000 pounds. It carries over 8,000 tons of fuel. It carries 2.2 million gallons of fuel. Just rough estimates.
What's the name of the ship? The Weight Watcher? You know?
Yeah. It's the SS Lizzo, I believe it was.
There's more of me to love, the captain said. Yes.
It's the SS Morass.
Exactly. very conservatively.
Robin Williams at the helm here. Can we make it under the bridge? No, but can the bridge make it over us? You know,
This thing is very conservatively estimated by just me randomly doing lawyer math, which is just dangerous in and of itself. Roughly 350 million pounds hitting a bridge at 8 to 10 miles an hour. What are you going to do? We're talking 350 million pounds. It's not a small ship. And first, the conspiracy theory, someone hacked it. That is just so I can't even know where to start. You would have to account for weather, wind, current speed, the tides moving in and out, the position of the exact position of the vessel. It would be so astronomically impossible to. Well, I mean, we're all lawyers. We know the problem that if someone comes to you with at least a moderately reasonable claim, it's very easy to defend. But when someone comes to you with some absolutely wild, completely irrational, batshit crazy claim, those are the most hard things to defend against because you don't even know where to start. And that's what this whole idea that it was hacked. Or there was,
Can we get into some discrete instances and talk about it real quick? And that is the anchor going on the port side, and yet the ship was. They say the ship was going to the starboard side, which I guess is the right side. Do you have a response to that one?
Conservatively, to manually drop an anchor, it takes about 15 minutes for it to set. I mean, you have to get someone. There should be someone near the bow of the vessel anyway, leaving port. But they still have to go, and it's basically got a large pin in it. You have to manually hammer this pin out of the chock block. And that drops the anchor from, say, 20 stories up, 10, 15 stories up. It's got to go down 50 feet of water in that channel. Then it's got to drag along the bottom until it gets enough friction or grabs onto something to stop it. It's not like jamming on your brakes. It's more like putting your brakes on a patch of black ice. You're gonna stop. It's just what's gonna happen along the way. And if you drop the starboard anchor, the stern of the vessel is gonna pivot on that point if it gets to that point. But you gotta remember, this ship is 300 meters. It's 1,000 feet long. So if people go, it stopped 3 ship lengths ahead. That's still like 3 car lengths on black ice.
It's kind of like a train.
So if I understand what you're saying, I mean, the allegation is, and the guy on the NTSB said that the port anchor was let go, and yet the ship actually crashed on the right side. So what you're saying is it takes so long for the port anchor to be go down to the bottom motion, actually have some stopping power. That's why it could go right, it could go starboard, and actually cause the damage.
And also we have to realize that starboard, towards the ship's starboard, that's the direction the wind was blowing at 13 knots, which is 17, 18 miles an hour. It's also the direction, it wasn't low tide yet, so the tide is still going out. That's the current of the water moving out of the bay. So it's going with the tide, the current, and this wind. And this is a 1,000-foot, 20-story tall sail, basically. I mean, I think we've all at some point in our life tried to get out of our car with a piece of plywood or a big box in a windstorm, and it blows us around.
Anybody ride a bike outside?
Yeah,
I'm serious. If you ride like training for a race or whatever, when you're riding a bike and you hit the wind, it feels like somebody is holding your brake as you're pedaling. It is so painful to try to get forward. It's very, very powerful.
Yeah, I mean, the stopping distance, it can take 1 or 2 miles to stop a ship with a dropped anchor. Wow. And on every ship on the bridge is what's called a turning circle, which gives you the time it would take a ship to make a complete 360-degree turn, which can be anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes. I mean, if you make a helm adjustment, it's going to be several hundred meters before you even start to see that change take effect. So when I explain shipping accidents to people, ship collisions and ship elisions, which is apparently the word of the day, it's like watching something in real time yet in slow motion at the same time, because it just takes so long for the effects to take effect.
Okay. Now, what about the issue? We talked about this before. What about the recorder? What about the 2 minutes missing exactly at the time of the crash, and the fact that there was battery backup on the ship for the recorder. Why would that be gone? What's going on?
Yeah,
there?
the VDR system is essentially a kind of a limited black box.
What's
Anything
VDR
that
stand
happens,
for?
voyage data recorder.
Thank you.
It's sorry, I forgot.
You insider, you name dropper, you acronym dropper, you initial dropper, you secret keeper, you proof of a conspiracy. What did you do to the captain? Did you have a microchip planted in his ear? Was there a CIA molar in there? Was the deep state behind him?
I'm just so happy we can talk about something that I know I'm talking about. I'm just happy to talk about something I know what I'm talking about. I'm just brings a tear to my eye. The voice data recorder is the black box, and it will record. Everything, all of the alarms, the speed, the distance to other vessels. It'll track all the other vessels. It records basically everything, and it all is recorded electronically. The electronic data is recorded. Now, there's also usually 6 to 8 microphones installed around the bridge. And the bridge microphones are linked directly into the VDR system. But everything else comes from the ship's electronics. So if there's no electronics on the ship, if there's an electronics failure, then nothing is being fed into the black box from the electronic data side. But the audio, which is running directly off of the VDR system battery, is being recorded. That's why there was no electric data recorded, because there was no electric data coming into the black box, but the audio was being recorded because the backup batteries on the VDR system is essentially a battery that's designed to last at least 2 hours under its own power. So it'll record audio for at least 2 hours without any ship's electricity being pumped into it. So that's why we get the audio, but not the data. I tell you, if you could harness the power of a black hole, it still would record nothing if there's nothing being sent into the black box.
Sure. I wanted to get this chat out because I think it's a valid point. Calls to not investigate by government do not help the conspiracy. I think that there's validity there. Not saying that you're trying to prove a conspiracy, but it should be investigated to say, okay, what can we put into effect to plan for this type of incident happening again? From what I understand, there was another incident in 2016 or 17 with the same ship. So, processes, it never really hurts, I think, to audit and say, okay, well, what happens here? Is there a way we can have a better alarm? Is there something else we could do? Put the brains on it. I think that's fair.
But here's the deal. I mean, watching these conspiracy rumors and intuitions and impulses take shape, this is a moment in real time to study what happens with a conspiracy theory. The universe is infinitely large and vast. Henry Kissinger and somebody, I can't recall whom, wrote a book about AI in the world. And basically it said there's so much big data out there being crunched by machine learning in ways that we vastly do not understand. And it produces data for us, and we're going to ascribe meaning to that data. So I think we might have a piece of chaos theory here, where, as described, something went on with the ship and it went bam. And now the bridge is down and we're all looking for meaning. Conspiracy theories can sometimes be a way of filling the gap with nonsense. And I think watching the explanations and the public calls for broader meaning in this is a really, really, really good chance to take a look at conspiracy theories.
Things like this are very much Occam's razor. Mm-hmm. I mean, which makes more sense, that some outside agency, some super secret government agency infiltrated the crew and somehow hacked into a essentially closed loop system and did all of this nefarious stuff, or there was just a damn power outage on the ship. This happens all the time, but it normally happens out in the middle of the ocean where there's zero consequences, and they go, crap, we lost power. Let's replace the damn fuse box. Let's go find out what the power problem is. This just happened to happen in a harbor right in front of a bridge.
But Occam's razor is hard to take because it requires ambiguity, and it requires an embrace of silence, and it requires, frankly, owning your terror. Ascribing meaning to a random event is easier. I mean, for example, I marvel at physicists. There are parallel universes. The argument goes something like this: in the infinity of space and time, if you can imagine it, it's happening somewhere, and therefore it's likely, indeed, it's possible, indeed, it is the fact that we are avatars in a video game being played by alien children in a universe we can't conceive. You can think that all you want, and you can probably produce a mathematical equation to produce that, but that's fucking crazy. Excuse my language. This is a YouTube show. That's absolutely crazy from my perspective. But the impulse to shoot meaning into the void, that's where conspiracy theories come from. And
well, it's not just
very, very intrigued.
But that's what I was saying earlier today. I'm happy that there are still accidents like this out there, because if there were not things that are legitimate accidents, I wouldn't have a job. So I'm glad there's actually accidents.
Some of us wouldn't have lives.
So I want to point out that it's over the last couple of years that the public at large really learned of the very unholy marriage between media and Congress, and furthermore that of the unholy marriage between Democrats and Republicans. This is a relatively new thing, which is why we're going to see a lot more springing of people speculating that Congress is pretending to be working in opposition to each other, but really working in lockstep with each other, and they're being enabled by the media, so we get no truth. So that leads people to make comments, I think, actually correctly, that when there's no investigation, we already worry that there's no transparency. So if there's no investigation that's happening, that's why people start with that assumption. Now, since we are left, and we, like, when I say we, I literally mean like everyone on this panel, and even you who watch this, who watch shows like ours, we're left in a position where we sort of feel like we need to sort of ferret out the truth on our own. And if that's what we're going to be trying to do, I want to caution that the healthiest way to try to do that is not simply look at the magnitude of how bad a result is, but look at the likelihood as to why it is that they would, if you're trying to figure out, was there a conspiracy theory? Everything I've seen to support the notion there's a conspiracy theory was this whole thing from Lara, what's her name? Lara Logan. Yeah, where Lara Logan was basically describing why it is that she believes that this calamity was particularly bad for America. And
was it Logan or Loomer?
No, difference. Logan. It was Logan. Yeah, okay. Logan. So she's focusing on, how this is an important part of our infrastructure and the hazardous materials, and she goes on and on and on to basically establish why it is that she knows why it is that this is such a terrible thing, and then she cites an anonymous source as to like the fact that people, some sort of anonymous source. Now, if you're someone who has been following the news for the last several years, you know how terribly unreliable the phrase "I have from an anonymous inside source."
That's usually I have an undigested wish, Yeah.
And so that's why what you really need to do when you hear something like this is not just focus on how big a calamity it is, and maybe it is the level of calamity that Lara Logan describes, but you have to sort of embrace, you have to say, okay, how much evidence do we have to support the notion that there really was some sort of, conspiratorial, nefarious action here? And then you have to say to yourself, and how strong is that evidence? And then you have to also, because we don't have people telling us the truth sufficient frequency, you like to sort of ask yourself, okay, let's say I want to go down this rabbit hole and sort of think to myself, is this really some terrorist activity or intentional activity? Would I do it this way? Is this the most logical way to do it? And someone pointed out to me something that I thought was really an intelligent point. If you really think that this is a terrorist activity, you have to first explore this question. If hackers could get in there for the purpose of turning off the power, why would they not just not turn off the power and actually steer the ship into it? Leave the power on the entire time and then just direct the ship straight into the structure. And that's the most obvious way to actually effectuate the objective. And since that's where Occam's razor is really helpful. If that's the most obvious way to make sure that this objective is reached, that's what you would assume that the people who would be trying to do something like this would do. Ask yourself why they didn't do it, and instead they had this convoluted, far less likely of being successful method of approaching it. And then you start saying, okay, so I'm not so sure this is really that this was
hold on, Joe.
An accident.
I think we might have been proven wrong, and super chats always rule here. Just want to point out that the ships being hijacked was the basis for the 80s movie Hackers, which just happens to be the first time that Angelina Jolie showed her breasts on screen. Movie recon, Mark Rocco. So again, we stick to the important topics here, and that is true. I see. I'm completely wrong. There had to be a conspiracy. We got all the way to Jolie.
And if you would please bring up Jim Satella's first super chat that you brought up a minute ago. There was one thing that I had to mention with that.
And I got to take it from Ian while I'm searching. You were
I just wanted to bring up, Joe brings up so many amazing points. There's so many things to address, but I do want to bring up one thing, specializing in social media and those kinds of things. And I got to tell you that any discussion about this conspiracy theory, and especially when we get into the larger context, which is this happened to divert attention away from the Moscow attacks, has to do with clicks. And I got to tell you, I don't know if you've done a broad analysis of your social media and seen on X and all these different things, but good example is I made a little small post on X about the potential for the U.S. being involved in the Moscow attacks. And within hours, I had millions and millions of impressions. So you have to remember that there's a kind of a context that's overlaid on this too.
Yeah. Can I get a clap?
Yeah, hi. You're in the 21st.
There, Ian.
You get a bunch of guys together. It's 1950. They're at the bar. I got 10 inches of dick and a bucket full of balls. Yeah, well, mine's a football field long. Yeah,
I got a million.
You got a bunch of old guys on a Friday afternoon. I got millions of clicks.
Well, I'm not telling you I got millions of clicks. I'm just saying.
Oh yeah. I got millions. Make a million.
Yeah. You're right,
Ian. This just shows we love you. Don't worry, bro.
It's like I talked about.
No, I know.
It's just me being.
Joe and I
I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Yeah. On Joe's stream the other day, Joe and I talked about the fact that there are so many actual real bad things the government's doing. There's so many actual real conspiracy theorists that if every single thing that happens in a news cycle is a conspiracy theory, you create a boy who cried wolf scenario. You have, I mean, the best
exactly
way for a government to combat. Yeah, that's the best way. People need to look into the conspiracy theories of conspiracy theory.
Well, I can help you with that. Okay. The term conspiracy theory is put forth by the CIA to combat Mark Lane for his investigations on JFK. If people really want to know the source of it. And it is an incredibly effective tool. I have the memo where they put it out, etc. But yes, it is very useful. If you want to hide something, the more ridiculous the claims can get, the better. And JFK has some good ones, like the Secret Service driver supposedly reaching over and shooting him from the front, which is one of my favorite ludicrous theories out there. But there are conspiracies. There was the Church Committee. That's absolutely real. MK Ultra, absolutely real. Operation Paperclip, absolutely real. These are documented. You have payroll, government, everything tied into that. But there is the problem, and I think what you're saying is if everything is a conspiracy, then nothing is a conspiracy.
Exactly.
Well, here's something that's not a conspiracy. What are they going to name this bridge when they rebuild it? You can't believe they're going to leave it the same name, right?
Scott Key.
Yeah,
it's going to be the Kamala Harris.
Yes. Oh, God.
No, it's going to be the Kamala Harris suspension bridge because you're going to have to suspend disbelief that she could actually be president someday.
I suspend disbelief she could be vice president. So it's a perfect pick because she got torched by Tulsi Gabbard and then picked up from the ashes.
Where has she been lately? I always thought she was sort of like a female stunt double for Mrs. Ed, but I mean, I haven't seen much of her lately.
Oh, look, she's impeachment insurance. It's not working out completely, but not many people want to replace the guy on top with her.
Don't say guy on top and come on.
Yeah, that sounds vaguely sexual.
What?
I mean, come on.
Look, I can't help her history out of California.
Crazy.
And it's clear we're changing the subject. Thank God for that. But like Jim Satala said, I agree with Jeff that it seems highly unlikely. But reports that the VDR recorded nothing from 1 minute before the power loss and that the batteries also failed. It seems strange. The batteries did not fail. The batteries worked perfectly. It's not there was nothing recorded for 1 minute. There was no electronic data recorded for a minute. There was 1 minute of audio recorded during that 1 minute. The audio feeds directly into the VDR system and is powered off the batteries. The batteries didn't fail. The batteries did their job, recorded the audio. No electronic data was being recorded because no electronic data was being sent to it. It's a big difference between no data was recorded and no electronic data was recorded.
Okay, so I want to jump to a less contentious subject. And as I said, as more people drifted in, I'm trying to assemble the P. Diddy Combs defense crew on Friday afternoon. So
we're the new super team. We're the new dream team right here.
He's going to jail.
I have a former federal prosecutor with Ian Corzine, who I'm sure has all kinds of ideas on how he's going to craft a defense for P. Diddy. What would you be looking at now?
I'm going to defer lead to Norm on this. So.
Oh, thanks. Oh, yeah. How'd that work out? Ladies and gentlemen, there was no plan for January 6th. Guilty, they said to the Proud Boys. Alex Jones didn't do anything wrong. $1.5 billion verdict, largest in world history for a defamation case.
Right.
I forgot to tell you I lost. I'll take second chair. Somebody else can put their nuts on the line. Mine have been crushed, and I need them for the balance of my life. I think this is a task for Nate the lawyer.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
Of course. What's up, Nate?
I know I turned on my camera at the wrong time.
Yeah, seriously. He's like Johnny Cochran right here. I'm stepping on in.
Nate, is it true that one of your eyes are glass?
No, I'm blind in one eye.
You're blind in one eye. Which one is that?
The blind one.
Notice how he points to the blind eye and looks away from the camera. Right? That's a little bit deceptive there, young man. Wow.
No, my right eye is the one that's atrophying, so it's going blind. So yeah.
What, you don't follow Christopher Boozy? He's told us repeatedly.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
I had a prosecutor once. She had a glass eye. She had blastoma or something as a kid. And it was the most unnerving thing because, it kind of floated in there and the pupils didn't go. And I never had the nerve to ask her which eye was the floater. And so I never knew which way to look at her. She'd give me that wall-eyed look and I'd be like doing ping pong. And I'm sure she had the eye poked out to have strategic advantage in cross-examination of witnesses because she'd get right up into people. They'd try to look her straight in the eye and lie. And of course they were shifty and that makes a witness look unreliable. It's a technique. So don't tell me you can't see out of the eye. You're a former prosecutor. You're not to be trusted. Everything is about bending the narrative to make people look guilty. And we all know that the two most sacred words in the English language for criminal defense lawyers are not guilty. Anyhow, Nate.
I thought it was check cleared.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, client calls. He's in desperate need. You say, I can help. Is your uncle Mr. Green? No. Well, what do I look like?
That was my AP English teacher. He had the lazy eyes where he's like, Jeff, I'm looking at you. I'm like, I don't think you are, but you don't dare cheat. It's weird.
All right, so Nate, fill us in. What did Diddy do?
Yeah.
Who did he diddle?
What did he do? Well, just first, there's a whole bunch of allegations, innocent until proven guilty. This all could be nonsense. But
what he did was, come on.
But what he allegedly did was, allegedly, I don't want these people coming after me. But anyway, so there's some person that he hired as a producer. He turned him into a videographer. This guy says he has hundreds of hours of videos and photos of them essentially committing all these crimes. So if you look at the pleadings, they lay out a whole bunch of screenshots, and under every screenshot of a video that says we have the video, we'll produce it. So the video has things like other rappers engaged in homosexual activity. It has Cuba Gooding Jr. allegedly harassing someone, a male, in a particular manner. It also has pictures of underage.
What particular manner, Nate? Don't be coy with us.
Well, don't forget this is YouTube, so I got to try to keep this thing monetized. So you have to tiptoe about how you say these things.
Handcheck. Just the tip, Nate. Just the tip.
Just the tip.
Or just the toe. He could have been a foot fetish, right?
This is in no way legal advice, but if you go into any situation, put the phone down.
Well, the guy actually says Diddy would take his phone and say, record this. So best all this
clients
stuff
ever.
So it seems like now a couple of people have been putting it together. It seems like that last lawsuit, because the ones before that everyone were talking about were from like 1991, 1994, 30, 40 years ago, something like that. So those weren't the ones that give him the probable cause. But this one says that all these events happened between 2022 and 2024, very recent. And when you have videos, you have screenshots of underage women and things of that nature, they believe that was the thing that gave the feds the probable cause to go in, because maybe they went to this guy and got those videos. So they're assuming. But now people are coming back and saying, well, the feds may have not found anything, because generally if you got those type of big raids on multiple properties, then what? And you don't have an arrest, then either you didn't find something or there's maybe not enough probable cause for an arrest at this time. So those are the theories that are out there. But right now,
we need to kind of begin from the beginning. I mean, this is this lawsuit started in January of this year. Little Rod Jones was Little Rod, we call him, and that's actually his real name. He's actually a musical genius and a producer. He actually ended up producing 11 of Diddy's songs. And he filed this lawsuit in federal court relating to sexual assault, RICO, emotional distress, a lot of different allegations, a lot of civil allegations, which he wants to recover money. So obviously, Nate is right. I think that because the complaint includes a lot of evidence in it, it appears that could have been a fundamental part of the probable cause determination. However, I believe that just because Diddy wasn't arrested just yet doesn't mean that they didn't find anything. It just means that they're in the process right now of doing tons of interviews, getting tons of affidavits. They would like to ironclad this prosecution that I believe is inevitable. I mean, it's rare that you get a complaint that kind of lays out stuff that is so harmful and almost so convicting. So this is where we're at right now. We have a civil lawsuit pending. We have searches of his Miami and his Los Angeles houses. And we have the concern that he's going to be indicted. And one of the biggest allegations, and Nate alluded to it, was that everything in that house or in those houses was recorded, and not just by Little Rod, but also there's video cameras, a whole complex system. This guy, you got to remember, I don't know how he got there, but he's a billionaire. So he has a lot of resources, and people are speculating at this time. We're talking about conspiracy, that he is the new Jeffrey Epstein and has a lot of dirt on people. And so people don't know how this is going to shake out. Some people say he's not going to be prosecuted because he knows too much. And some people say he started divulging things, and as a result, he's going to be given the full power of the law and then later on be disappeared. I can go on forever, but those are the essentials.
Well, the biggest thing they haven't found so far is Diddy.
Oh, no, he's that. Yeah.
He's all over. Did he show up today?
With his daughters. Yeah.
Oh, last I heard he wasn't. I'm sorry, I'm in the future. I'm in everybody's future over here. Danny, what's up? Danny's also in the future. Danny's in the same future as me.
One thing I do like is that how some celebrities were named, but he didn't name the other celebrities, but he essentially made like a Jeopardy game. Like, Jeopardy, like the conclusion. He's a Philadelphia rapper who dated Nicki Minaj. That's Meek Mills. He performed at the Super Bowl and was very successful Vegas resident. That's only two people on the planet. That's Britney Spears and Usher Raymond, right? So it's like, I understand you want to make it as juicy as possible, but the other theory, the people who are defending Diddy are saying that this lawsuit particularly is a money grab, right? You throw in all these allegations. He's not saying that these things that happened particularly. He says a couple of times they happened to him, but he says like Cuba Gooding Jr. did it or somebody else threatened him. He never really says Diddy did anything bad to him.
Yeah, but that's a weak appeal to motive. Every high-profile guy who gets sued says it's all about money and it's BS, and that it's just not much of a defense. I mean, if that's all you got, you need a new lawyer. You need us. We got to come up with a better defense. It was a conspiracy theory done by a series of Ukrainians held hostage at a Romanian troll farm that is paid by Vladimir Putin to do work on contract by the CIA, which is trying to settle the score with the NSA because Kamala Harris knocked that bridge down, and unless the bridge gets named after her, there's going to be hell to pay. That's the defense. Okay, now we got to keep that down to 10 words or less.
Have to.
Yeah. Why are you bringing the Tate brothers into this, Norm? No.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah,
those guys.
But he was making fun of one of the people named in a Diddy lawsuit. He was like, "Oh, can you believe Diddy?" Like, but didn't you? They had the same kind of stuff against you, right? Suppose allegedly sex trafficking. He's like, "Oh yeah, I forgot." So I don't know.
But speaking of forgot, there's also the allegation in the lawsuit that Diddy was involved in a murder or not a murder, excuse me, a
car bombing,
wounding with a firearm, which was not adequately investigated by the LAPD. And could cause there to be more investigations related to that or his son could have been involved because it's alleged they went in the restroom, they heard some gunfire, came out, and then someone was shot in the stomach.
Well, what about Biggie and Tupac? He's supposoly tied in with that stuff. I keep hearing.
He essentially admitted to having Tupac shot initially. But he admitted a lot of stuff. But again, it's like you'd have to really trust this guy who's saying that Diddy essentially told him all his secrets, and now he's putting in a lawsuit for $30 million. I don't know.
I trust him, but you can't doubt the video and the image evidence.
Definitely.
People need to look at this lawsuit. I put a link in my X post on this. You should look at it because even though it is mere allegations, it's mere allegations substantiated with video and image evidence. Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens if the feds can actually get their hands on the videos that allegedly were taken in the actual houses.
Yeah, these are some of the PC videos. So you guys, so
thank you.
But so he does a lot of screenshots. So these are screenshots of allegedly sex workers. And then I think in a subsequent filing, he's named like one of these sex workers happens to be 50 Cent's baby's mother. So that's caused an issue.
Diddy, come on, brother.
Yeah, so here again, there's still shots of stuff. These are still shots of the booty trap where they got some of the sex workers.
Oh God.
Here is the pictures
booty trappers.
Booty trappers. And they also have some stuff here. This is where they're on, I believe, this is Mr. Combs with an underage girl. He's underage females. Again, she has them thing. And then he's a sex worker. He also has his son with the underage women. So again, these are screenshots of videos that he says he has, and he says throughout the lawsuit, I have the video, I'll show. And then there's obviously him and Cuba at the same party. And this is Cuba Gooding Jr. This is like the big picture that everybody's playing, where Cuba is allegedly forcibly touching Mr. Jones, who's the person filing the lawsuit. So he's saying he's being sexually harassed and fondled by Cuba Gooding Jr. in this photo. Now this photo doesn't look good for Cuba. I'm just going to say it doesn't look good. It looks damn bad, but these are some of the allegations.
Maybe call me crazy.
He's comforting him like a father.
Call me
you could argue that to
crazy.
the jury.
I have such a difficult time believing that a guy who looks like that is like, the beefcake that everyone was hunting after, the way he alleges in his complaint. I mean, maybe I'm crazy, but he basically, when I was reading the complaint, I was reading the complaint, I was like, man, I guess this guy is like, the second coming of Denzel. That's what I was expecting him to look like.
He has a lot of riz. Okay,
I was expecting him to look like that. I was expecting him to basically look like a young Denzel or an Usher. Some sort of like.
Well, haven't you read the papers? There's an obesity crisis in the United States. 200 is the new 140. Okay, I mean, the standards have changed.
But Joe, he's got the picture though. He's got the picture. Cuba doesn't look like he's worried about his weight in that picture. Doesn't look like he's worried about his weight, right? So.
As an example, are you saying like Terry Crews, Joe? Because Terry Crews accused a lot of people of harassing him in that manner, and he's seen by many to be a very good-looking guy, very well built and stuff. So,
like
I
Nate.
don't know.
Yeah, like Nate. Yeah.
So, does anybody have a thought on what is really behind a potential prosecution of Diddy? Like, is it literally the law enforcement just trying to do their job? There's been allegations of trafficking, and RICO, and obstruction, and so they're just trying to do it, or is there something larger?
Well,
is this the start of the Epstein list?
I'll ask you all a quick question. Why is this Homeland Security and not the FBI? Like
trafficking?
Great question.
It's a very very strange
question.
It's the same people who are Border Patrol and
I will
cross-border trafficking.
So what does that tell us? What does that tell us about what they suspect about him? I mean, what can we glean from
well,
that?
We know it's trafficking.
International trafficking of that could be any age. It doesn't have to be underage.
But if international trafficking, it wouldn't be Homeland Security, right? It would be FBI.
Man, can I purge my soul for a moment? I have to make a confession. So a client of mine, consent rape. These sex cases just drive me crazy because sex drives so much of the criminal practice.
But by the way, it's YouTube, so we say grape or the R word.
Just great. Yeah, right. Okay. So this fellow, he's accused of doing the wild thing, and the claim is his claim is consensual, the other's not. So we're getting ready to go to trial. He's got Mr. Green flees. I move to withdraw because I'm tired of doing charity work. On the record, the guy begs me to stay. The judge says, "All right, we'll give you a couple more months." Guy promises on the record that he'll pay me. What do you think he gets charged with 3 days later? Child sex trafficking. And I'm like, you really think you're going to pay me to defend your grape case? I filed the motion to withdraw so fast the keys on the keyboard were smoking, and I thought, man, I'm getting too old for this work, because there was a time where you could do anything and I'd defend you, but I felt like I got drawn into Jeff Epstein or P. Diddy or dark passion world, and I just didn't want to go down that rabbit hole. But I look at these sex cases and I don't understand the energy that drives them. I mean, it's a responsibility to manage your body and the relationships you have. And people just take a take a walk on the wild side and they never come back. And so what's the motive for the feds prosecuting? I suppose he's a big target. I suppose that there are children involved. Maybe I don't know what. I mean, I don't know what leads federal prosecutors to charge in some cases and not others. But these sex cases are just wearing me out. I mean, I'm just wearing. I mean, we're all circumstantial evidence of someone's desire, and at some point we've got to come to terms with the fact that there are forces in the world that we can't comprehend and that the law perhaps can't harness, and these are some of them. Okay, Nate? On that conversation ender, I'll move on.
Yeah, thanks, Norm.
Hey, Mr. Buzzkill spoke. Yeah,
You know what? While I got a bunch of people here,
let's call me 38 caliber.
I'm going to toss this one to Norm too, because he was discussing, I think, earlier on his show, La Pod Daily. Sorry, slow a little bit, and this is about John Eastman. And this is probably of particular concern to everybody here except for me, because you can't disbar me, folks. I ain't a lawyer. What are your thoughts in terms of what a lawyer's job is? And I don't know how it falls inside or outside of the law. And I'm sure that there's different thoughts.
So every lawyer here lives by their wits. People call, we can't solicit clients, and they say, can you help me? And your first question is to try to situate this person in the wider world. Passing the bar exam means you are at least nominally competent in spotting issues that the law can resolve. So they say, what do you need? What can I do for you? The person tells you your story or their story, and then you start to situate them in the law's cubbyholes. Then you say and then you make assumptions about what their interests are. If it's criminal, they have liberty interests. If it's financial, there are those, child custody, whatever it might be. So you learn the client's interests, you counsel them nominally on what the law can and can't do, and then you cut to the chase and you talk about dough. But once you take the pledge and you're on for your client, you have a duty of zealous advocacy for that person and a duty of loyalty to them to the exclusion of the world. And you are required as a matter of law to do everything that the law permits you to do. And that means be creative. And so I am all in favor of creative lawyering. I had a confrontation with a judge this week in chambers, asked me my position on some issue. I said, I don't particularly care, but out of obligation to my client, I'll object to make you make a decision because I'm trying to force error here. He said, what? I said, well, lawyers have three things to do: object, win, preserve issues, and then force error when the judge appears to be indecisive or the law is unclear. So I'd like you to make a decision. So I've got something. He says, I don't endorse that third point of view. I said, well, I live it. So the Eastman case, what terrifies me about it is the following. You've got Eastman. He's not telling Trump, go buy a 30-06 and blow away the third guy that walks out the door. That would be evidence of a crime. He's taking creative, if unconventional views of the law, and he's saying to Trump, you can advance this theory or that. And I think that's what lawyers are supposed to do. So the notion that a judge, and Rule 11 of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure talks about lawyers having an obligation not to bring frivolous claims, but if you bring a claim unsupported by law, it's supported by a good faith basis in the extension of existing law. And what I've read of Eastman, I may not agree with his views, I may not even understand some of them, but he wasn't saying that ET ate his homework. He was basically advancing unconventional legal theories in the best spirit of loyalty to his client. So I am terrified by the judiciary's leaning on Eastman here. If he brought vexatious claims, there are sanctions. But the notion that a lawyer can be disbarred for creatively thinking within the bounds of the law strikes me every bit as significant a threat to the the legal system as threatening a lifetime appointee to the bench. We want a strong, vigorous, and independent bar. So at least my office and our people will give financial support to Eastman, and if called upon, we'll help him, because I think the independence of the bar is pivotal. And every time I've seen when you go to a baseball game, it's a World Series, 5th game, Chicago Cubs versus the New York Yankees. That's the one I'd like to see, since I lived in both cities at various points in my life. I'm paying to go watch the ball game. I don't give a rat's rear end who's behind home plate. We don't come to watch the umpires. And every time the umpires step in to play the game, there's a failure of the system. And so I think we need to rally behind Eastman to support an independent bar.
I'll take that one step further. Right now, there is more evidence to support the notion that Eastman's novel theory was correct than that it was incorrect. And the reason I say that is, those of you who are unfamiliar with the novel theory that Eastman, what he did is he wrote a brief, which was the brief that most of the right, most for the MAGA portion of the right, was advancing on behalf of Trump leading up to January 6th. Specifically, that the notion that Mike Pence had the authority as vice president to look at the alternate slate of electors and to say, I don't know which slate here is correct and which one is supposed to be recognized. So I'm going to just put these aside, not count it for either party, not count this state or that state, or like 6 states for either party, whichever state had dueling electors, and then there would be insufficient electoral votes for either candidate, Biden or Trump, and that would turn it over to the states, and the states then each state would have 1 vote. And those votes are basically governed by the majority of people on the majority of congressional representation they had in the House. And the Republicans had controlled 26 states to 24 for the Democrats. And the assumption was that those 26 states would all support Trump. And that's how he would win the presidency. The people who were fighting against Eastman were claiming that that Mike Pence had no authority to do that. Essentially, that Mike Pence's role, even though the Constitution specifically says that the president of the Senate, which is the vice president, has the duty of opening up the votes and counting them, that his role in that capacity was exclusively as some woman, as some eye candy woman on a game show saying, and now we have these Biden votes, and now we have these Trump votes, and that's what his role exclusively was. And when I say that there's more evidence to support Eastman's theory that Pence had more jurisdiction than what people are saying, is Congress's own admission. Congress admitted essentially in 2021 that they recognized that Eastman's theory actually had some legs to it. How do we know that Congress admitted it? Because after that whole incident happened, Congress passed a law saying going forward, no vice president has any more authority than a game show hostess to just read out the actual certified votes that appear before him. Well, what does that mean that the law was on January 6, 2021? It means that Congress was worried that there's actually a legal rationale to say that he did have that authority.
That's a great point. That proves the case. You're right, Joe.
And that's why to say that he should be disbarred for advancing a theory that as of today we have more reason to think is true than that it was false at the time that he issued it is so utterly grotesque. And it's such a tell that the entire objective here is to punish counsel for Trump.
And it chills the bar.
Yes,
it chills the bar
to chill every attorney from saying, "Oh my God, if I represent Trump and I come up with a theory that people don't like, I am never going to be able to practice again." And that's the entire objective here. And whether you love Trump or hate Trump, you should, if you have any sort of belief in our Constitution, you should recognize what a terrible day that is for our democratic republic to basically say, we don't like this guy, and we're going to try and do everything we can to make sure that he can never have adequate representation.
So amen. Lawfare on steroids.
Following what you and Norm said, take it the other direction. Recently, there was a case where the theory was that traffic court judges can disqualify a presidential candidate based on the 14th Amendment. It was so dumb that when it went to the Supreme Court, it was 9-0 blown out of the water. No, they couldn't get any Supreme Court justice to go the other way.
Even
Should every lawyer who worked on that case on the losing side, should they all be disbarred? Because this was obviously a ludicrous situation if it gets a 9-0 decision. Of course,
Rachel Maddow says yes.
Of course they should not, right? But you see this works in just one direction, right?
No,
I do.
Well said.
Runkle from Canada, what are your thoughts on this type of thing? I don't know.
I tend to avoid politics, but just the note. I mean, criminal defense is mostly the job of defending people that other people don't like. So my whole job is defending people that usually are unpopular for various reasons. You know, if you've got a grape case or something, this doesn't mean that you associate with your client in the sense that, like, I'm not endorsing the activity or anything like that. So if they start going after lawyers for representing unpopular clients, it's not long before they get to me. And I don't have anything to do with Trump or anything like that. It's just, guy who gets into a traffic accident and they say he was drunk. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. But, the guy needs a defense. So I am concerned if they're going after counsel. I don't like that at all. whether I agree with the underlying person, or not.
Who has the loudest keyboard on the planet?
It's usually me, but I'm not typing.
Joe's not typing for the first time ever?
No, I'm just hearing
Nate. It's Nate.
Maybe it's somebody tap dancing. I'm not sure what
it can't be me because I was on mute. So
it's someone hacking into the ship.
Oh, I'm wondering. Is it the CIA coming for me? What's going on?
Coming once again, wearing Hillary's high heels while thinking about Joe Biden falling up an airplane step.
That has to be it. That has to be it. So, in your thoughts, I mean, Ian, I'm surprised, or Jeff, you haven't kicked in on this.
Oh, I've already spewed my expertise for the night.
Oh,
yeah, that's why we want to hear you. The expertise we didn't understand, your opinion we want.
I don't know.
Or Danny. Actually, Danny, you haven't talked at all, have you?
She hasn't said a word.
No, she's just eye candy for the panel.
Ooh, you sexist anchor.
I'm very, very white right now, and that's because of my setup here in South Korea, my little impromptu setup. But this is an ongoing issue. I mean, this is I wish I could say it's Democratic playbook. I just happen to see more on the Democratic side because that's my purview. Right? I'm only 30. How old am I now? 33 years old, and so that's what I have been seeing.
Jesus was when crucified. Don't minimize it. You could save the world.
So this has been for the Democratic side. I don't get what I want. Things aren't going my way in the legal sphere. If someone's come out with a really great legal argument, now let me go ahead and attack the attorney. And this has been ongoing. It's not just this attorney. My understanding is that Trump has had almost all of his attorneys in, and there have either been charges or full-on investigations brought against them. And I would be terrified. And this is not just me, it's all attorneys. We don't want to end up, being crucified on behalf of our client. We're there to, there's a sense of immunity. We're really stewards of the court. We work for the court and we work for our client. We have obligations to both. We have a duty of candor. We have certain duties that apply to our representation. And in turn, the court is not there to go after us individually. So I have serious concerns with the way that the Trump attorneys have been treated generally, and that this has become somewhat normal for, at least from my observations, and expected. I don't see a lot of attorneys jumping up to defend Trump because they know that their entire careers are on the line, and not just careers, but their licenses.
And on that note, actually, I just had an interview with Norm, which I put out on Wednesday on my channel. It's just my name, Eric Hunley. I hope people check it out. Norm, you've had experiences on both sides of this because, I mean, while Trump may be one of the most loved or hated people on the planet, another guy who is one of the most loved or reviled people on the planet is Alex Jones. You've represented both Alex Jones and also people who have done actual heinous crimes of which they've been convicted. What kind of pressure have you gotten for both? And is it different on the political side versus the typical hated criminal who did bad things side?
Well, so it depends. I mean, the Alex Jones case is unique. I was looking in my cell phone to see if I could find you an email, but at 4:39 on Thursday, I was getting ready to go out and do Wednesday, a stand-up gig in Bridgeport at the Stress Factory. I get an email. I just watched the new HBO documentary on Alex Jones. You're a despicable human being, a terrible lawyer. Congratulations, AH, for making the world a worse place, blah, blah, blah. Now, at least that was more polite than some of them. I've gotten notes, I hope you die of ASS cancer. I'm trying to be sensitive about Google. And I'll respond by saying, why would I need that when I have you? But this note really devastated me because the level of hatred. And so I posted it on Twitter. Come to find out, this guy is a former Southern Poverty Law Center lawyer. And I posted it on Twitter with his handle because I want him to look in the mirror and ask himself what supports that hate. But Jones, I simply do not understand our world any longer. The level of hatred and vitriol for Jones is unprecedented. I've received hundreds of hate mail letters. Sometimes people hate me for not doing enough to defend him. I didn't move to exhume the bodies of the children. It would show they're not there. But more often than not, I'm hated for standing next to him and defending his right to speak. And it has been soul crushing. Indeed, by publicly being associated with Jones, members of my own family have adopted the standpoint that I am not to be trusted. It was a contributing factor in the end of a marriage where my wife of many years, who was on the left, her father did time for under the House Un-American Committee for pleading the First rather than the Fifth Amendment as a matter of principle. Her mother was indicted for seditious conspiracy by Massachusetts, and everybody's marching to the left. When I started to defend people who were bullied by the left on the right, I became a monster in my own home, and that was the end of that. And I'm going to defend who I'm going to defend. I'm going to follow that imperative. So I think there's something crazy about the world. I've noticed with many people, their rhetoric doesn't match the life they live. I think I mentioned this last time, Eric, or maybe with you on a different interview. I was at a dinner party at a friend's home the other night, and his brother started spouting off. He sounded like a bad advertisement for Fox News. Homer Simpson gets hammered and he starts talking, and the rhetoric was so ugly. And I finally stopped him and I said, "But your life is so lovely." He is raising with his daughter, their biracial son, and he's dedicated, or daughter rather, dedicated to this child, has genuine love for her. And I said, do you not feel the dissonance, the difference between what's coming out of your mouth and what's coming out of your heart? And somehow in American politics, we've gotten there. And I don't know why it is. So the hatred out there is overwhelming. In the Jones case, talking... Give me 1 second, Danny. To Danny's point about lawyers, all the lawyers in the Jones case got attacked. I'm facing a suspension for 6 months as a result of a ministerial error that I really don't think is significant. So I've had to gear up my firm to prepare for a 6-month absence and prepare in case I lose in the appellate court. And and any number of lawyers who've read into the case have come in and said, how'd you get a suspension out of that? That's not even worth a reprimand. My Texas co-counsel in the cases was brought into Connecticut, reprimanded. So I think the bar has to double down on principle. We have to stand together to defend what's right. And, young people can't afford to take the risks that old people can. So, my children are all grown, gone, their education's paid for. I've got grandchildren. Whether I practice another 5, 10, or 15 years is a matter of largely of indifference to me, because I will go down swinging however I go down, and I'll reemerge swinging at something else. So a memo to the judge and haters, get a life. Because there are always going to be people on the front lines of principle who are going to stare you down and stand you down. And so, Danny, you're a young member of the bar. You're on your way up. I'm rounding third, heading for home. So I've got freedoms you don't have. But I think it's important for the bar to stand together and push back hard against attacks on the bar.
Oh, Norm, I have all the freedom in the world. Because I said F it to the system a long time ago. I wouldn't be here on YouTube if that weren't the case, right? I'm fully aware that
otherwise. I'm sorry.
Yeah. My marketability to, the big, large corporate law firms is gone. As soon as you start to voice an opinion or have any semblance of normalcy or individuality, you're automatically shoved away. And the reason for that is because we have gone through a cultural revolution, not unlike the CCP. And communist China and the Soviet Revolution. When you see these things happening, you have to call it out. And that's what I saw because I am a young attorney and because I just left law school. I can tell you that the same things that I was witnessing in undergraduate studies in terms of social coercion and social cohesion followed me into law school and was actually amplified in law school. So I studied political science when I was in my undergrad. And there was this belief in avoiding ad hominem attacks and actually having good faith arguments and arguing out ideas and reasoning and using logic to come to an answer and following that sort of Socratic method. And then once you got into law school, the Socratic method is no longer employed. And if it is employed, it's employed incorrectly. And it's utilized as a giant hammer for law professors to break you down and to tell you that if your opinion is not that of the majority of your classmates, then you are wrong. And there is no two ways about it. And so they very much dissuade you from any sort of creative lawyering, and they try and weed out those with conservative leanings right off the bat, or at least that was the case in my law school at the University of Utah. And if that's happening at my law school, I can only imagine what's happening at other law schools.
Well,
so those are my
that's
how we got where we are today. That's my opinion.
I was a law school professor for 2 years, and I taught at a very, very liberal, white people bad, black people great law school. And I will say this personally, when it came to stuff like abortion, we did say, because everybody comes in there and says, oh, the right's crazy. But they told us literally, it was our job to stop people from thinking that way. Because if you thought that way, you would lose, because you have to fight the argument. You can't fight the person. So just saying this guy's bad because he's bad and not look at the argument. So we did say the other side has an argument. So we would literally say, all right, if you believe abortion is legal, here's the Constitution. Show me where it's legal. And they couldn't find it. And then we just go through that whole process of there are real arguments on the other side. So I don't know how it is in Utah, but the reason why the law school, the very liberal law school, was doing it is because they said, if you can't understand what the other side is saying, if you're just attacking them for being them and don't understand it, you can't be effective for your client. So it was a tool of maybe yes, we were saying this is the way you should think, but you have to understand the fundamentals of what the other person's saying. Like what happened on The View recently with Sunny Hostin. It was about racism, and the guy is a black Democrat, goes on The View and he says, hey, we should stop just looking at this as race, black good, white bad. We should be looking
Coleman
at
Hughes.
Yes, we should look at this, because if the argument is that black people, or the more poor people, are black. So if we stop saying let's just help black people, let's say let's help poor people, then disproportionately you're going to help more black people, because you're saying more black people are poor. Sonny Hostin was essentially arguing we shouldn't help poor white people. And I think that's where society has gotten. And I think we need to kind of pull it back and start saying, let's stop attacking people because we don't like the side there, but let's start trying to figure out what arguments they're making and attack the arguments. And if you just watch it, she couldn't attack those arguments at all, because the arguments that he was making was actually correct.
Yeah, that was a great segment. He also ate their lunch, in my opinion. He handled himself so well. Coleman Hughes on The View. Well, Sunny Hostin first just went at him, just lying. First off, she goes, well, we know you're a conservative black. And he goes, what are you talking about? Or black conservative. And she's like, no, I'm not. She goes, you said so 2 weeks ago. And he goes, I don't believe so. And he actually did not say that. New York Times said it on a podcast that he was. And then he responded on a tweet saying, you can call me these things, but that's not how I identify myself. And then he went on and he said, but besides the point, you're not really helping move this forward by using ad hominems to attack me. He said, we need to be talking about this subject and not not me as a carrier. And he was so eloquent in the way he put it. She just looks stupid. Like he quoted Martin Luther King, and she's like, well, I know his granddaughter. It's like, but that's not exactly your response, dummy. He said, and then she quote Martin Luther King. He goes, yes, but the rest of the quote is, and then he starts to go on. She goes, well, it doesn't say that. And then she misquoted D'Angelo or somebody. And she's like, no, it was, he goes, no, that's what was written. And she argues, he goes, okay, everybody just go ahead and look that up and we'll move on. He handled himself extremely well, I feel, in a really pressured situation, and he did it both nimbly and humbly, because he wasn't combative at all. He is very, very respectful. You're muted, Nate. Very respectful and open-eyed, just curious, like ready to listen to anybody around him. Is very difficult to attack his presentation.
Yeah, but and the other women on The View actually were coming to his defense. They were
and
like,
the
"No,
audience
that's not what he's saying. He's not a, you're just attacking him because you don't like the points he's making, but attack the points." And that's why personally I was extremely left wing, and the reason why when I started looking at the argument, I was like, you know what, this immigration thing, I think they're right. I think just letting people in here, and me and Joe have had all these arguments, and me and the rest of you guys have had all these arguments. But when you stop attacking the person and start trying to figure out the rationale, look at the Young Turks. The Young Turks, the last couple of videos, they're like right-wing lunatics now, because they're all listen to Anna. She's like, yeah, this is BS, this is BS. But I think sometimes, that's the fight. The fight isn't against the person. It's about what they're saying.
See, I shoved that red pill down your throat. I attacked you from the blind side.
You did. Remember
Well,
the joke?
speaking of right-wing lunatics, it's time for me to take off for the night here. It's 2 a.m. here in Korea land. So,
all right.
What's everybody doing in Korea?
Running.
North Korea by that.
It's about as far as we can get it from America without getting closer again.
Wow. All right.
I said my two friends from Utah, they go and they run to North Korea. What's going on? Is Utah
Oh wait,
that
people
bad?
think Kurt and I are the same person, so that we can't be seen in the same place at the same time. Now it's time for me to take care, folks. Love y'all. We'll see you next week. I hope.
See you, man.
Bye.
Thank you.
And
See you,
with
Kurt.
graceful X, I'll take mine as well because it is 2:07 a.m. and I have had a very long day. But I do love you guys. Thank you so much for having me on, Eric.
Thanks for coming.
Jenny.
Thank you.
Nice. You, Norm.
So I gotta. Are these guys practicing in Korea? I mean, should I be opening an office there? You know what?
It's probably slightly freer than here in North Korea. I mean, no, I'm just kidding. It probably feels like that sometime. Let me see. I wanted to shift. Okay, so we talked about that.
How do you become a lawyer in North Korea? That's a good question.
I don't know. I guess
Are there lawyers in North Korea?
Yeah, that's another good question.
You take that box of Korean Cocoa Pops, you empty it out, you cut the thing, you send $27 to the regime, and they send you a Harvard law degree. If anybody questions its validity, they're killed. After 6 deaths, you're a lawyer. All right. So I mean, it takes some work, a little bit of time. It's costly, and then anything you say goes. You know, as long as you're a friend of Kim. And you get a Dennis Rodman shirt and an autograph, free tickets to the NBA. It's a good gig. It's not for everybody, but
okay. Actually, I do want to go to another subject. Somebody asked based on this tweet, and folks, you can follow me on Twitter if you want to find out when these shows go on and other great content. And I will pay attention if people come up with ideas. Chris Lockhead, somebody I know, he's a legendary marketer out of California. What do you think about the reality that SBF will be out at 50-ish in only 15 years after committing a $8 billion scam?
This is a really good question. This is something I did a video on this week. Do you guys remember the First Step Act back in 2018? I think it was. President Trump signed it into law. It basically allows for white-collar criminals the ability for good behavior to cut, in excess of 50% of their sentences.
Really?
So
I missed that one.
Yeah, it's an unbelievable thing. I think it's 211 days can be cut from their sentence based upon their behavior. And then my additional point was, I'm wondering if the feds are going to use SBF going forward for any of the skills he has, kind of like in the nature of Frank Lelane? Not Frank Lelane, but one of those guys. Abigail, excuse me. Yeah, for the fraud situation, based upon his knowledge of cryptography and the upcoming CBDC coming out, will they use him and cut even more of a sentence on? And then taking it even a step further, will eventually over time he just be disappeared? He'll just be gone. The public will forget. The $8 billion that he stole from FTX investors will be long forgotten, and he'll move on with a life, like I said in the video, in Cape Verde somewhere. I think it's crazy that 25 years can be cut down that much when someone did such a horrible crime.
Yeah, I had said 15% because that's the standard rule for good behavior, but there's a special rule for white collar, so I missed that memo.
Yeah, I'll direct you to my video, but if you look at the First Step Act in general, you'll find the ability. It's not just necessarily white collar, but it's nonviolent, and there are multiple different types of credits you can get. It's not just one. So yeah, you can get, and I can give you the links for it. You can get substantial time off your sentence, a federal sentence.
But let's face it, 15 years is not nothing.
No,
I mean,
that's true.
$8
billion
significant federal
is not nothing either.
No, but I mean, it's only money, and I mean,
it's a very coincidence, though, that we're going to give some accommodations to, let's say, the people who are maybe donating to our
That's exactly right, Eric.
Things like that. I mean, I of course have a dark mind, so I apologize.
He donated hundreds of millions of dollars to the deep state. There's no question about that. And it's not just money. This is people's retirement. This is people's investment portfolios. They did not get into.
Well, should he have been executed on the public square? Would that have been justice and made everybody feel good enough? I mean, we're meeting each other for the first time. Sending a person to prison is always an awful experience. and it's my job to minimize it. And I've had people, I've had death penalty cases. I've had people sentenced to multiple life terms. Anything over a couple of years hurts. I always tell folks, you can do a year because you don't lose your place in the world. You think next year at this time I'll be home. 2 years, you start to lose your touch because next year I'll be here. Last year I was here. 3-4 years, the time starts to do you. 10 or over, you come out a different person. And so from my perspective, 15 years is a huge sentence for a financial crime.
Yeah. I just have a different opinion. I think that
I get it.
The magnitude of the crime is such that 25 plus is something that should be in the judgment for SBF. This is a situation where he completely upended an economic system. You got to remember, all the crypto markets went down, the dollar value went down. This was huge, and so
if there are 4 purposes that we're taught in law school to the criminal sanction: punishment, protection of society, deterrence, and rehabilitation. Which one of those is the most weighty factor in your view that 25 years at a minimum is necessary and sufficient?
Well, I think deterrence is a large factor. I think that people, if they know that if they mess around, especially a young kid like this guy, mess around in creating a trading exchange and take people's money and then lie to them about what they're doing to the money, I think that's enough to make people think twice before they go this route. So in my opinion,
think long and hard on what you said. I'm open to it. I'm listening, and I'm trying to get out of my own way, which is my biggest stumble.
I'm going to jump in for a second, really quickly, because I have a question of what about people who are investing? So I understand what you're saying about a financial crime that feels victimless, but then is it victimless when people are losing their life savings and their retirement
their lives are shattered
because they're getting scammed by an individual? So that starts to weigh into maybe the punishment side a little bit more, or retribution. I know that sounds terrible, but
reciprocity.
And I'll tell you this. I'm about to date myself.
Really? Is that called self-pleasure? Hi, my name is Onan. I'm right-handed, but we can do, yeah.
I actually almost finished that line with this. I was about to date myself like a teenager who just discovered his own body. But yeah.
Okay, brother-in-law. I'm sorry, Steve, shaking his head. He doesn't want to be running with this crowd. Got it. Sorry.
But
I'm
yeah,
checking it at Joe.
There's a movie called Malice featuring Alec Baldwin, Nicole Kidman, where the philosophical question is raised in there. I'm not going to ruin the movie for those.
How many people died in filming?
Not yet had a chance to see it. This is from 1992 or something. But yeah, Alec Baldwin and Nicole Kidman and Bill Pullman. And the premise of one of the things that happens in the movie is there's a lawsuit. And it's pretty much a little bit of a legal drama. There's a lawsuit where Alec Baldwin plays a doctor who takes out the wrong ovary from a woman, and the question is thrown out there, how much money would you take for the loss of a pinky or a major limb? How much would you be willing to suffer for that? And the question that I think Ian is basically presenting to you, Norm, is, okay, for $8 billion, how much time in prison would you be willing to serve? And it's probably a lot more than 15 years.
Well, let me shift the analysis somewhat, and I'm not trying to avoid the question, Joe, but here's what came to mind, and I'll try to give you an answer to yours. I've defended more murders than I can recall, and a distressing number of them are young guys who get in a beef over a girl and kill someone impulsively. And so I had a case, young guy in the presence of people who've known him for life, over a woman, shoots a guy in the back of the head in front of many witnesses, and he's dead. There's not much you can do with the defense there. And so he's convicted. The maximum sentence for murder in Connecticut is 60 years. The judge, recognizing his youth and lack of criminal history, gives him 45. It's reported in the press, a juror calls me enraged after the verdict. You didn't tell us this could happen. Why didn't you tell us? His life is ruined. And I said, because the law didn't permit me. But now let me turn the question to you. Had you known the penalty?
You couldn't have figured that out by yourself. He's charged with murder. What did you think was going to happen?
Yeah.
Well, you know, people, the number of people who say, I read in the paper this guy killed somebody and got 6 years. I get this from my clients all the time, and I always tell them, stop right there, find out the guy's lawyers, fire me and get him, because it ain't happening, babe. But so, you know, I say to her, would your verdict have been any different? No. And these cases always make my heart ache, because I can understand impulsive rage. I can, you know, and the taking of a life is a horrible thing, but every murder costs 2 lives. And so I think 45 is too much. I think people are different. But so Joe, I don't have an answer to your question. You know, would I gamble 25 years on 15 billion or 8 billion, 15 years? I don't know how to make that calibration. And I'm listening to, I'm sorry, I'm new on the show, Mr. Corzine's comments, and I don't have an answer, but I heard what he said. And what he said causes me to try to reframe the discussion and be open to the fact that I'm just been in the trenches so long, you know, I'm eating pig truffles thinking it's caviar, you know.
Well, I'll point out, Norm, until you made that point about 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, and the impact it has on a person, I hadn't really considered that. We tend to just think of time, and does this sound like it's enough or it's not? But you actually, I think you added a lot for people to consider, that because you deal with people who are facing lengthy sentences and can recognize the difference of an impact that comes when you cross a certain point and on your entire life. And I think that's something that most of us who never did any sort of time, if any, couldn't really appreciate without that perspective.
No,
you know,
I got the prison was bad memo. I got the prison was bad memo, so I don't commit crimes because prison's bad. I don't want to do the bad jail time, and I don't want to lose my place in society and all the rest of it. So general deterrence, it works.
I mean, this is actually one of the few cases where deterrence makes sense, because typically we talk about deterrence in the context of like 2 guys at the bar, they're both drinking, one of them loses temper and, you know, stabs the other one. That's not a guy who's thinking of deterrence in that moment. There's zero thought through his head about what kind of jail time. But here we're talking about a guy who had all of the opportunities to not do this. He was wealthy before this. It's not like he was stealing food to, you know, survive or anything like that. And this was a very planned and elaborate operation that took a ton of time. We sentence people to non-trivial amounts of time for things like somebody who works at a gas station and they can't make their bills, and they just take they take like $50 out of the till. If you take $50 out of the till every day to pay for a cab ride home because you live out in the middle of nowhere, by the end of the year, that's actually a lot of money, and they'll sentence you to a lot of time.
Who is Fannie Willis?
I mean, what's that?
I said, who is Fannie Willis? That's what she said. She said she took $50 at a time being paid back $20,000.
Also for the campaign fund. Yeah.
But this is the time. If you're ever going to hammer anybody, it should be this. And they talk about all the mitigating factors of like, oh, this guy's, you know, got a great upbringing and so forth. And I go, these are actually the reasons to hammer this guy harder, not to cut him a break. I'm much more sympathetic to the person who's like, I am desperate and I've never had an opportunity, and okay, like I stole from the till at the gas station, than I am from this guy. And there were, Rob in the chat pointed out, there were 3 unalivings, I guess, to avoid Eric Hunley getting too much issues associated with this. If this guy had killed 3 people, we wouldn't be saying, oh, it's 25 years too much. But I mean, indirectly, that's, you know, the damage this guy has done.
So I tend to agree with Ian. And also, you got to understand the context of the situation, guys. You got to remember his parents are 2 Stanford law professors. They are heavily connected. He had within his grasp, even if a lot of it was taken away and there's going to be some, you know, payment back of many millions / billions of dollars. What's really going to happen is that, or what did happen, in my opinion, is that money was stashed away. There is no question that this guy is going to get, you know, we can debate about if it's 15 or 12 years. I say 12 years. I say he's going to even get lesser time or more time taken off. And then the other part is, guys, this guy is going to live his life just perfectly. He, you know, it is really, like Joe said, a question of what would you do for? Because he did this crime and was benefited substantially, had a great life while he was out of jail. He goes away for 10 years. He comes out 40s, and he's got hundreds, well, I shouldn't say that, millions of dollars with which to rely on. So this, in my opinion, is
well,
a
he does have that
miscarriage of
$11 billion forfeiture order.
Yeah, well, he has that. But guys, listen, I do offshore asset protection. The guy, there's no question. The minute there was a sniff of this problem, what he did is he moved his stuff to a trust, an irrevocable trust, and had Swiss bank accounts. He has money. There's no question in my mind. He is going to get out in 12, 10, whatever years and going to live a great life. And he's going to be disappeared.
And Lone Lumber made a point there. I don't know if Eric can bring it up, but he said, go back and read through SBF's own statement. During sentencing, he displayed no recognition that what he did was wrong. And that's after the judge found 4 separate incidents of perjury by SBF at trial, which he should be charged for that as well. But there's 4 separate incidents of perjury. This is not a guy who feels remotely bad. This is not a guy this is not a sympathetic figure, as Runkle correctly pointed out, that this is a guy who basically was gifted with a silver spoon in his mouth and another 2 for each of his hands, and he turns around and use those gifts for the purposes of ruining the lives of countless thousands of people, and so that he gets 25 years and is out in 15 with the potential of being able to successfully hide his assets, as Ian just pointed out, and actually living a life of luxury far beyond that which any of us could actually imagine is disturbing. The only heart I take from this is at least there was some measure of justice, because imagine if he had been found not guilty. Imagine how terrible we all would feel about the pathetic state of our
country. I'm hearing Frederick Nietzsche in the background, beware resentment, and I'm thinking F. Scott Fitzgerald, the rich are different. Let's not be resentful of the fact that he lives a financially graced life, that those of us who claw our livings out of hard rocks with bloody hands have a little bit of resentment. I mean, I get that, and I have it.
I don't think that's what's being said. I think it's a terrible analogy, but it's kind of like Fonnie Willis. Like, I find Fonnie Willis's stunts more despicable because she should know better. Yeah, and I think they're saying that, like, he was given privilege. He was not poverty stricken, etc. He was raised by very intelligent parents, things like that, who hopefully would do a better job raising him versus a street kid who's struggling.
There's no
his parents are sociopaths also.
So, but a sociopath, it's a character trait that's never going to change.
Which is all the more reason to keep him in prison longer, to save society. How about that isolation? Isolation's looking real
Stop
good.
Stop him from doing it again.
Well, hold on.
I'm hearing you, and it's just, I'm in the business of minimizing prison sentences, and I hear you, and I don't have an answer. I'm open to what
your clients can go to hell.
I do want to ask one.
I've heard that too.
F. Alex Jones.
I do want to ask. I do want to ask one question about his past. Let's say he was poor. He grew up poor, and then the same thing happened. He stole. Would we be saying 15 years is good? Because I don't think the way he grew up and his parents, to me, what he did, like, he knowingly did what he did. So even though if he had rich parents, even if that doesn't really equate, to me, it doesn't really move the needle either way.
I think it does, Nate. Honestly, if he grew up and was a self-made person who made some mistakes on the way and then started to go down a path, am I saying he shouldn't be punished? Absolutely not. But it wouldn't hold him in the same regard with the same background. The same way as if a cop does a crime, I hold them more responsible than if a citizen does a crime.
But that's what I'm saying. So essentially, you're holding him responsible for the way, the fact that he grew up affluent versus what he actually did.
I don't know about that.
Right?
I'm just rejecting affluenza as a defense. It's like
that's what I'm saying. I don't think it changes the needle. Like, if he was poor, grew up poor, and got 15 years, I think we'd be saying the same thing. It's not enough time. So I don't really think it moves. I think we're arguing over something that really doesn't matter in the long term. 15 years is too short, no matter how.
The thing is that we hammer people who commit crimes of desperation, and then we seem to cut people a break when they commit, these massive, let's just consider a hypothetical. Let's say we change our sentencing such that for financial crimes, sentencing is fixed based on the dollar amount. Based on the amount we sentence the person who steals from the till, SBF should be in prison until the earth falls into the sun. That's sort of how that would go if we just did it by numbers. Or else we'd be sentencing people who steal from their employers to sentences of you will be, sentenced to incarceration for a term of 8 seconds. Learn a lesson, right? Those are sort of the options. There's this huge sentencing discount for stealing tons and tons of money. And I mean, like, if you printed this out, like if you had this in singles, it would be literally tons of money here.
Can we tighten the analogy a little though, Ian? Because I think an armed robbery for a little bit of an
armed robbery. I'm talking about the person
scraping the till. Scraping the till. Okay, that would be a better analogy in my opinion. I just want to make sure, because an armed robbery is a violent crime, and I think that brings a lot of other factors in other than just the money amount.
Employee who embezzles a little bit here and there from the till, and it ends up being
our federal sentencing guidelines. And I just looked them up while we're talking. Under Section 2B 1.1 of the federal sentencing guidelines, there are staggered adjustments for loss amount. The problem is the loss amount table doesn't contemplate this. Yeah. It tops out at 20 million. So for a loss greater than 20 million, you add 22 levels to the chart, and that'll take you into the high teens range, I think, depending on other offense characteristics. So it may be that we need to have a new table. If it's over $1 billion, kiss your rear end goodbye and see you in deep space. I don't know. You guys just kind of blew me away and forced me to reconsider my view.
That's why this show's awesome.
I'm gonna use a little bit of math just to blow your mind. If he's in jail for 15 years, that's 5,475 days. That means if he finds a way to actually successfully hide his $1 billion, for every day in jail that he is suffering a penalty of being in jail, he's getting $1.4 million.
All right. So let me tell you
that's to draw Ian's point out as far as the punishment based on how much you stole. $1.4 million for every day in jail.
There is value to the human spirit. True story here. Suffice it to say, some drug gangs had a beef in Hartford, and rather than resorting to lawyers and franchise agreements, they decided to shoot it out. So one gang shoots it out and wipes out a gang leader, 14 shots at a stoplight, and the organizers of the gang get charged. One of them is my client, he and his brother. The feds seek the death penalty. You go to the death committee. We can talk more about that some other time. They elect not to seek death, and my client goes to trial, and he is indisputably guilty. So he is sentenced to 6 consecutive life terms, one on top of the other, plus a bunch. And so we're standing there at the sentencing, and a very uptight federal judge who has the nickname Queen of England is reading him the Riot Act. So he gets his first life sentence, and then he gets his second, and it's pretty clear what's coming. So I turned to him before the third, and I said, this is actually really good news. And we were good friends at this point. He says, why is that? I said, you're going to get 6 consecutive life terms here. They got to revive you after each death penalty, or it's an illegal sentence. So we started laughing, and the Queen of England didn't like that. And I turned to her and I said, well, what would you have us do? You were imposing a mountain of despair on the human spirit. And even in Hobbes' Leviathan, written in the 17th century, where people entered from civil society from the state of nature for the sake of security and gave up all their freedom, the man had a right to fight back if the sovereign sought to take his life. And so for the life of me, I will stand for the human spirit, the dignity of the person next to me. And I realize this makes me an outlier today, but no one is the sum of their worst moments. I have begged judges in horrible cases to give my clients 40 or 50 years, young men who've done horrendous things, so that they could at least fantasize about a stop to McDonald's once before they died. Deprive a man of hope, and you may as well kill him.
Well, Norm, I could tell you this, speaking for myself. We may argue with you all day, but I'll be the first one to hire you.
Yeah. Well, don't do it. And when you do, we take cash, but over 10,000, we got to report it. Credit cards, but I hate doing that. So get a certified bank check, and make it out to Pattis and Paz LLC. We can negotiate the zeros later.
Hey guys, I gotta go. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time.
Thank you.
I got to get out of here too, guys. So you guys,
we don't get a law tube discount. we don't get a law tube for you.
No, Nate's got an appointment with the eye doctor. He can't see sticking around any longer. Right?
I like that one. That was a good one. Later, guys.
See you, Nate. Thank you, man.
See you, Nate. Be well, buddy.
Let's see, prospering women. He needs 50 years. All the women he defrauded that will never be able to retire because of his fraud. That's kind of what I was saying. And again, I don't know the terms, but I just want to always illuminate those people who may be forgotten when you're looking at the scope of a crime. And financial crimes, it tends to be, hey, nobody was hurt. And it's like, taking somebody's life savings away is true harm. That is the equivalent of a murder to some people, because they work their whole life.
I hear it for the first time, Eric, and it chastens me, and I really need to think about what you're saying.
All right. Well, I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad, but
no. I mean, I'm open. I mean, you're telling me things. I take the time to. This is a great discussion. Thank you for having me. It's nice to let your hair down, so to speak, with other guys and hear what they have to say. And I don't know that I'm right or wrong, but I know that your comments have taken root, and I got to rethink.
I don't know that there is a right or wrong. I think this is a really subjective thing as to where morality lies.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how fair it is. I don't know how fair it is, but Norm, but if someone were able to successfully strip you of all your worth, take away your law firm and take away all your equity and take away your home and take away everything you own, what would you feel is just in such a situation? But they don't harm you physically. That's the problem.
No, that's the problem, because the law says no one can be a judge in their own case. And so I wouldn't be the person to ask, because I would be devastated. When we impose judgment in a criminal case, a victim has a right to be heard, but society has a right to see that justice is done. And in my view, you recognize the harm, the devastation done to the person who's lost everything. But is it really necessary to deprive the person who took it of everything? And I think the law's answer should be something other than everything for everything, not an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. There is some inherent dignity to an individual. That and with respect to the law example, hey, I'd be free. I'd start over again. I mean, I came into this world without a pot to micturate in, and I'd go back out to find another micturation pot.
Well, and Norm, I think you mentioned this earlier. But they're after you to some degree on your right to earn a living. I mean, I watched a lot of what you did in the Jones trial, and I have a great deal of respect for the pressure you were under. Just what I could see on my screen, I can't imagine it in real life. That you would do that is very impressive.
Indeed. It was horrible. I mean, it was between a case in which my client was in the national news and he had killed himself on the eve of trial. That was the Fotis Dulos case. Managing that simultaneously with Alex Jones, who I'm still in after 5 years, going down to the DC Proud Boys. It was an enormous pressure cooker. And I think the result is that something in me cracked, and it certainly dissolved my firm. I had to reform it, ultimately dissolved my marriage. And so, you ask how I'd feel if everything was taken from me. I would feel that I was given a tremendous opportunity to reassess my priorities and reemerge better and stronger. Because in the end, what choice do you have?
Well, in that case, I'm going to start plotting against you.
That was very,
you know what?
You'll take
it very sobering. It was
it is sobering. Look, I mean, so I've been asked by, somebody whether I would consider having a 3-act play done on life and the law and in high stakes cases. And somebody, it's being worked on. And I gambled everything and lost a lot, but gained a lot. And I think that it is sobering. I mean, but Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "Be careful when you stare into the abyss, lest the abyss stare back into you."
That's
and
so
true. I danced on coals. I got my feet burned, and now I'm learning to waltz yet again. And I have a number of choices. I could go kill myself, but somehow that seems a little permanent. And I love the business of living. I could succumb to the haters and decide I am who you are, who you think I am, and that would result in a form of social and intellectual death, and I'm not going to do that. Or I could embrace the spirit within me, which says I choose life. And I choose life no matter what the difficulties. And that's the spirit that I defend in my clients when they are broken by the things they do. And it's what makes me an advocate for them, because I genuinely and truly, I've had remarkable discussions with men who've done horrible crimes. I mean, I don't want to say too much. There's a certain member of the Hells Angels doing life. And, every now and then, every decade or so, I'll stop in to check in on him when I'm having a bad day. And last discussion I had with him, I said, I've got everything, houses, fancy cars, money in the bank, but I come to you when I want to be calm. Why is that? And he said, they can take my liberty, but they can't take my mind. They can't take the spirit within me. And, today's Good Friday, by the way, and so I got up this morning and was reading through the Catholic Missal, as I do not infrequently. And I noticed, and I'll pull it up here. I noticed Psalm 31. And it really spoke to me today. For all my foes, I am an object of reproach, a laughing stock to my neighbors. They who see me abroad flee from me. I am forgotten like the unremembered dead. I am like a dish that is broken, but my trust is in you, O Lord. I say, you are my God. In your hands is my destiny. Rescue me from the clutches of my enemies and my persecutors. King David wrote that when he was the king of Israel almost 3,000 years ago. And that book has endured over time because we have all from time to time faced odds and been driven to our needs to accept the grace of an unseen God. Now you're saying, hey, wait a minute, that's going a little far for a Good Friday. But we have a long spiritual tradition in the West, and sometimes circumstances call for relying on it. So happy Good Friday.
Well, you know what? That's a perfect note to wrap up on because I can't really punctuate off of that. So, Steve, it's dark wherever you are. What do you have coming up?
Yeah, it's all natural lighting here. It comes and it goes because we're about to move. So, other than the books behind me, everything else is pretty much packed up. So that's what I'm working on is that.
Oh, crazy.
And watching some cases and putting down videos here and there where I think I can aggravate people the most.
Awesome. Ian, what do you have going on?
I've got a video that I've got to upload right about now, which is I did an interview with the lawyers who are trying to sue Andrew Tate out of the UK. So that's kind of interesting, confirming, amongst other things, how they managed to go after his bail, which was an interesting little tale there. But so yeah, that'll be going up shortly. And other than that, I've got a lot of writing to do. I've got a firearm court case on the go, so I've got to do a bunch of writing for that. So I might be a little slow for a bit, but I guess the good thing for SBF though is that one of the things he complained about was that he was in the room that had no bathroom in it in their luxury suite, but now he's going to get a room with a bathroom. So things are looking up for SBF.
Oh, see, there you go. There is always some joy to take out of this. We have next Norm. And by the way, before we get into that, I'm really happy. Norm came on here for the first time last week, and I asked people to give his channel a shot and check it out. And we got him over to 1,000 subscribers. And
thank you very much.
You guys, I love helping anybody I can to build channels, things like that. In the description of this show, everybody, you should be able to click on any of the channels here. And I hope you consider clicking on all of them and just clicking on it and hitting subscribe, seeing what they're about. I even put my own on there. And of course, I would really appreciate if you subscribe to this. But Norm, what do you have coming up on your channel?
On my docket, we're starting trial. My partner and an associate in Danbury, Connecticut, next week in a so-called black money fraud case. It'll take about a month to try. And so, trial prep goes underway, examination of witnesses or examination of witness statements and so forth. And I'm continuing to screw around with stand-up comedy, getting ready to run down to Atlanta. Very grateful for the love and support of friends who've stood by me in a hard time.
Say hi to our friend Phil while you're down there. Probably a
right, I will.
Kurt, what do you have going on?
Yeah, so I've got a couple of U.S. Supreme Court oral arguments to catch up on. I'm going to be doing the Supreme Court oral arguments relating to whether the federal government improperly interfered with social media in COVID by encouraging them to eliminate disinformation, whether that was a First Amendment violation. So
Two oral arguments on that, right?
Yes, and I'm looking also to covering a interesting case, which I'm not 100% sure why the Supreme Court took this particular case, but this relates to a woman in Texas who was elected to city council, was circulating a petition to get rid of the city manager, and then put it into her binder. They accused her of stealing government property, and she brought a First Amendment retaliation claim because she's like, well, I don't like the city manager, so they say that she was arrested for her speech. And so she's trying to bring a retaliatory arrest claim. So the Supreme Court is basically trying to argue whether or not she can do that or not. And I'm not quite sure why they took the case at this time, but I'm looking forward to covering that. So we'll be covering those two oral arguments on my channel. So I look forward to that.
Yeah. All right. And the long tradition is we always try to have Joe go last because Joe always has a lot to say.
I have thoughts.
That's good. Yeah, so what do you have going on, Joe?
Yeah. So we're roughly 2 weeks from this Monday, we're going to be seeing the start of the Trump trial in New York, the criminal charges that were brought by Alvin Bragg. We don't know yet for sure. I don't know for sure. I don't think it's going to be televised. If it is, I'll be live streaming it. If not, I will be going to the courthouse myself with my fresh new media pass and my lawyer's card, and be able to cavort in and out of the courthouse to provide updates and give you actual reporting as to how that trial is going. So that's over. And you'll know where to find me over at goodlogic.locals.com. And I just want to give you this final thought. We are all John Eastman. Amen. You're John Eastman. I don't mean just the lawyers. I mean you watching. You are John Eastman. We are all John Eastman. And what do I mean by that? What does that mean? Why would I say we're all John Eastman? Well, it's because this. John Eastman represents the human spirit in that we are all continually fighting for against the environment. And that environment could be the physical environment of the earth. It could be society. It could be your own inner turmoil. But we're all fighting against that. John Eastman took a position that he knew was going to be very, very unpopular with millions, tens of millions of people, or according to the left, 81 million people. And he knew that he was going to be taking position and advocating for a position which he's fighting against the world in levels that you and I probably will never have to fight against. And he went in there with brazen balls, the kind of balls that Norm Pattis has displayed in a courtroom countless times.